Hallo meine Lieben und herzlich willkommen zu einem neuen Video von Gaming Scharf hier auf unserem YouTube-Channel Scharf und Scharf im Bereich von Guild Wars Infos in der Thematik der Rubrik Klassen. Und zwar haben wir hier wieder ein Video im Bereich der neuen Elite-Spezialisierung, die mit Vision of Eternity kommen, dem neuen DLC zu Guild Wars 2. Und zwar konnten wir uns jetzt im ersten Twitch-Stream von ArenaNet angucken, den Messmer, den Wächter und den Waldi. In diesem Video gehen wir auf den Waldi ein, weil wir haben nachhinein darauf reagiert und das habe ich aus dem Twitch-Stream hier reingesetzt. Das heißt, ihr seht jetzt einmal so, was da es für Fähigkeiten gibt, was er kann. In dem Fall ist es beim Waldi der Orkanschütze, der storytechnisch darauf aufbaut, dass die Tengus jetzt sich doch ein bisschen mehr öffnen und uns ein Vertrauenssymbol zu zeigen, bringen sie uns quasi gesehen bei, wie man mit dem Bogen noch cooler umgehen kann, um den Wind zu beherrschen. Was mir nicht so ganz klar war, aber es wirkt danach, wir brauchen scheinbar den Großbogen, damit das funktioniert. Und es wurde auch gefragt, wie es unter Wasser ist. Da würde es sich auf die Speerschleuder beziehen, die Fähigkeiten. Also für unter Wasser ist die Frage, wie sieht's dann aus? Tun sie den gleichen Effekt machen oder passen sie es unter Wasser ein bisschen an? Das konnten wir bisher noch nicht sehen, konnten jetzt nur am Land sehen, aber daran haben sie gedacht. Dementsprechend funktioniert diese Elite-Spezialisierung jetzt aber wieder ähnlich wie die eigentlich von End of the Dragon Spezialisierung für den Waldi, wo wir ja eigentlich, um ihn richtig nutzen zu können, den Hammer brauchen, den wir durch die freie Waffenauswahl zwar darauf verzichten können, aber eigentlich für ihn völlig unsinnig ist, der Ungezähmte hieß er, glaube ich, für ihn eigentlich total schwachsinnig ist, dass er den Hammer eigentlich nicht benutzt, weil er durch den Hammer halt besser gebufft wird. Und hier gehen wir einen ähnlichen Schritt. Eigentlich ist es keine freie Waffenauswahl, sondern wir beschränken uns hier trotzdem auf eine Waffe, die wir irgendwie brauchen und nicht. Muss man auch hinterher dann später in der Beta sehen, wie es ist, aber auf alle Fälle zieht der Langbogen auf alle Fälle auf seinen Nutzen da draus in den Fähigkeiten durch Eigenschaften. Dementsprechend wünsche ich euch viel Spaß mit diesem Video. Ja, jetzt kommt nur noch unser Orkanschütze, der die Tango-Lehre auf dem Waldi. Aber es putzt sich genauso wie die Blogposts geschrieben sind, merkst du auch hier, wie weit intensiv die jeweiligen Figuren sind. Also lustig beim Wächter, dass da noch die ganzen Bildchen fehlen, währenddessen der Messmer sie schon drin hatte. Zusätzlich sieht man aber natürlich auch, wie weit die ersten sind. Also wir sind mal nächste Woche gespannt, wer wie weit ausgebaut ist.
Some people like to gravitate towards the archer characters, and so Ranger is kind of that for them. But then when they got to Elite specs, there wasn't really one that elevated that fantasy. So that's what the Gale Shot's trying to do, is kind of be that signpost spec for if you really like playing archers in games. There's a lot of archers in our game, but Gale Shot is like the one that's highly focused on that fantasy. So, you know, part of the Tyrian Alliance, you know, the Tengu are teaching Rangers how to control wind magic and be even better with their bow. So you're going to see a lot of mix of like the archery, the wind magic, and some bird aesthetics, because that's always fun. So that's kind of like the initial idea and why we decided to go with the Gale Shot. So yeah, now we're in game, we can talk about what it is. I think when you first look at the UI, you can see a new F5 skill where you go into the bow and so you have these feathers that are your arrows. These are kind of going to be your resource for the spec. Continuing with the UI, when you know Cal will use the skill, you see it takes an arrow and you have a meter where you can see the time until your next arrow. So you know you're not guessing. You have the recharge there. And another thing you can notice is that Cal doesn't have no recharge on, but the bow doesn't have a recharge. The bow is something that you can always have the option to go into. This is something that we felt was important with the Archer Fantasy, is the ability to always have something to do at range. So the auto attack also doesn't cost any of the arrows. So wherever you are, you're able to auto attack with the bow. Obviously this is very strong. Competitive mode is going to keep that number probably low, but in like instance PvE fights, if the boss jumps away, you always have the option to swap to your bow. And that's something that's just one thing the spec brings that's kind of different from if we just made, you know, a normal weapon that's gated by weapon swap, is that, you know, you could have a longbow, but even there are times where you swap to your other weapon set that you don't have anything to do at range, so that's kind of a gap that the spec is hoping to fill.
Ja, super. Wir wechseln zwischen zwei Bögen. Wir haben jetzt den Standard-Langbogen und dann machen wir einfach einen magischen Langbogen raus. Wow, weil wir es können.
And then, so going on to like kind of like the mechanics of the bow is that as you see Cal use skills, he'll get this buff on his bar that's called Wind Force. Wind Force is kind of, you build stacks of it up to your payoff. If you hit 5 Wind Force, you'll unlock what we call the finale skill Hawkeye. That's intended to do a lot of damage and hope for you to cycle through your skills.
Also ähnlich wie bei Initiative vom Dieb, das baut sich halt hier ab, je nachdem welche Fähigkeiten wir benutzen.
Sometimes Firebrand with these like no cooldown abilities is that the optimal playstyle. It should go and press the good button then leave. We wanted the Cyclone bow to have more interactive play than that. So that's what Hawkeye is intended for. You want to like wait for your
also wie beim ersten ist er so aufgebaut, dann durch wie ein Dieb.
To get that big payoff, but you always have the option to, you know, go into the kit if you need to use that evade backwards, or you just want to auto attack some. Maybe you have enough arrows that you can do a few blusters before you go back to your weapon. So it's trying to aiming to be fluid and always have options to, you know, support this range play style, no matter what's happening around you.
All right.
So
talk through the skills.
Talk about the actual skills.
What is Bluster, as you just mentioned?
Bluster is the 2 skill. This is kind of your bread and butter skill. Has a really low cooldown, costs 1 arrow, so you're going to be weaving it in a lot. You know, just quick charge up, then quick burst. Pretty simple. You know, nothing too crazy about it. Then we go to the 3 skill. This is going to be Fleeting Zephyr, your defensive. You know, wanted to make sure the weapon has at least like 1 defensive in its kit. So you're going to do a leap back and evade. That's always useful.
Hat bei dir, Stefan, eigentlich noch einer den Bogen überhaupt?
A pretty big projectile destruction.
Bei deinen
Part of
Waldis?
being good at range is being able to trade in range. So if there's another person that's shooting at you with a projectile, you have the ability to use that to stop a pretty big important like incoming attack, and also use it to protect your allies if you see a lot of projectiles incoming. The next skill is going to be Quarry's Peril. So it's going to be a ground target, you shoot arrows up, and then after a delay, they rain down, and it's going to immobilize people. You're going to do some okay damage, but hoping the immobilize is the main aspect to kind of lead into your other skills. You know, you can Quarry's Peril, then hit them with a Bluster, or when we get into the 5 skill, also use that, and just some ranged poke that is not affected by projectile denial, because that's like a big part of Worldly World that we know, so we want to make sure that you have ways to interact that aren't just through normal projectiles. And then we can go on to the 5 skill, which is like kind of another capstone skill. Supersonic Arrow. It's going to be very strong. It's going to take a lot of arrows, but hopefully worth the payoff. You're going to stand still and channel, and then shoot a really fast arrow. I think I set this projectile to some insane number. It's almost instant, basically. It's going to do pretty heavy damage. CC, unblockable pierce. It's a very good skill, and one that if you're fighting a Gale Shot, you want to definitely see coming and evade. This is also something that you can line up with Quarry's Peril and then use Supersonic Arrow. And part of the payoff for being such a high arrow cost is that it's also going to give you 2 of those Wind Force. So you can get to your Hawkeye even faster if you choose to use it. Then, you know, just talk about
also es ist nochmal eine theoretisch eine Aufwertung des allgemeinen Langbogens nochmal. Also bevor wir den Langbogen überarbeiten, machen wir es einfach nochmal magisch.
And its functionality is basically you're going to use it on a target, it's going to lock on to that target, and then shoot 5 arrows at them, and then it's going to look at if there's any nearby enemies to them and shoot 3 arrows to them. So it's potentially a lot of arrows if you have a lot of people near them, and kind of like a cleave arrow ability. That's kind of like the core gameplay loop. Go in, use your arrows, come out, and you know, as we talked about in the blog post, mobility and you know, swiftness, being mobile and controlling the battlefield is also part of the spec, and that's going to come through more of the utilities. So we can get into those. The utilities are going to be squalls. They're basically small bursts of wind magic that are kind of like cantrips, but cantrips already exist in Ranger, so these are windy, small wind magic effects. The heal going to be pretty simple. You're going to heal yourself and give yourself super speed and cleanse some conditions. It's a very basic,
Speed natürlich nicht schlecht, weil wenn du wegen der Heilung abhauen musst, ist das natürlich
heal,
nicht
but
doof.
What you want. There'll be a couple super speed tie-ins when we get into the traits, so that's pretty good. But it's just, good value, what you want from your heal. We probably have seen this, but I want to make sure people know that there's no weapon restriction on Gale Shot. You know, the F3 is just like an addition, so you're gonna have 2 weapons normally plus the bow. There's no locking your skills. So now, just wanted to make sure because I saw some confusion over that. So then we can go into the more utilities. There's kind of like 2 offensive ones, 2 defensive ones. We can talk about the offensive ones first. The first one is Piercing Gales.
5x2000
pretty
Damage,
simple,
okay.
Just damaging abilities that you want to fit into,
Unverwundbarkeit,
like rotation PvE
wow.
or use for additional poke. You're going to shoot 5 projectiles that pierce, kind of like in a pattern to make an X formation that I think looks pretty cool.
Da sind noch keine Cooldowns aktiv, ne?
It's going to pierce. These projectiles inflict vulnerability, and then at baseline, you're going to get additional damage increase from vulnerability. So if someone has 10 stacks, you're going to get the 10% bonus from vulnerability, but also deal an additional 20% damage. And then another tweak to the skill
Damage
is that it's going to fly faster, the arrow, or the wind magic projectiles.
1200er Range.
Wow. So it's kind of trading with someone.
Also wenn man nochmal einen Bogenbär-Vivaldi baut, denke ich, man kann damit schon mal nochmal ordentlich einen draufsetzen. Aber da wäre wieder auch so, wenn man jetzt Charakter baut mit den beiden Vogelkopfhelmen, wäre das natürlich dann sehr passend.
This skill is intended to be a payoff for having a lot of projectiles using things like
das ist wie typisch Wand.
Like Axe 2. You're going to create a screen of freezing wind, and then as you shoot projectiles through the screen, they'll get frozen, which will chill the enemy they hit and deal additional damage. So this has the potential to do a lot of additional procs of that damage and chill. Has the potential to do not that many, so you really need to plan around when you're going to use the screen. You know, put it up right before you're in a Hawkeye, use those piercing gales through it. You know, if you rapid fire it, it's going to be, you know, plus 10 extra procs. So this is a way to encourage, you know, some more bow usage in the elite specialization outside of like just having the normal cyclone bow.
Also works with any projectile skill, right? I can use my axe and throw some axes through it.
Yep. Then we can move on to the defensive utilities. The first one is going to be Wind Shear. This is just a quick knockback around you, a swell of wind. It's going to, like I said, knock back enemies, stun break you, and then it has a very short projectile reflex. So if you see a pretty short one coming,
selber kriegst den Stunback weg.
You know, edge over range.
Du kannst dich aus dem Stun befreien und kannst den Gegner aber gleichzeitig damit wegkicken. Also wenn zum Beispiel sie sich stannen und sie laden auf dich drauf, kannst du halt sich daraus wieder befreien und sie gleichzeitig von dir wegdrücken.
It's ground targeted. You're gonna leap through a whirlwind, evading while you're leaping, and then grant yourself a burst of super speed. It's gonna be important, you know. If you're a long-range character, you want to position
das ist eine krasse Move-Fähigkeit und hat Munition. Aber im Endeffekt also nur zum Abhauen oder vorwärts kommen. Das heißt, der Waldi hat damit jetzt einen Blink.
And then, you know, we can get on to the elite skill, Perfect Storm. You're going to charge up, throw a tornado in a direction, and then where that tornado lands, it'll grow larger and kind of deal taking damage while it's there. So it's a DPS skill. And then when you throw the tornado, it'll launch people along with it. And kind of the special part about this skill is that the launch is variable. It will launch them towards where you target the tornado to land. So you can target it right in front of you, and if you launch an enemy, they'll launch just in place right in front of you. But if you target it all the way out, the tornado will kind of carry them with you and go a really long launch, and then the end goal is that they'll always end.
Das ist auch so ein Ding, wo ich gleich sage, das wird bestimmt genervt. Hat er auch schon vorher gehabt, ja?
Alright, so then we can move on to the traits.
Alright, traits.
Yep. Alright, starting with the minor.
Hier ist gesagt Schießkunst rein, ne?
You know, the first one, just as always, just explains the spec, the teaching of the
Mehrere Target, 5x3000er.
5-second recharge time to start. Obviously, things can be tweaked like that. Has a tooltip for Hawkeye. Then we can move on to the Master Miner, Bird of Prey. Strike damage increased while you have swiftness or super speed.
Den würde ich mir eigentlich den reinballern.
Effective. So this is an ore, so if you have swiftness or super speed, doesn't stack. But you're just going to get a damage bonus for the things, like using the heal, get the super
Okay, nochmal Damage Boost wieder mit 10%.
And just making yourself faster in general.
Sehr interessant.
As the spec wants to do. And then we can go to the Grandmaster Miner, Jetstream. It's just going to give you a base movement speed increase. We see a lot. Even if you don't have swiftness or super speed, going to move faster. And then Hawkeye will grant you super speed. Sometimes you need to commit a lot to get that Hawkeye bonus, so this is going to make sure you get that Bird of Prey when you're using it, and also just a burst of movement speed to reposition after having to invest into it.
Okay.
We can move on.
Genau, also er kriegt sehr viel
Add-ups here.
Speed mit rein, dem
The
Super
first one
Speed.
is going to be Joy of Movement. This is just
Ja,
simple
wieder
bonus
so
onto your
ein Klassiker,
squalls.
von wegen ich
Use
befreie
them,
mich
you'll
von
move
bestimmten
with pairing
Zuständen.
conditions. Those can be pretty deadly, especially the spec when you get chilled, immobilized, pretty vulnerable. So you have this trait so that when you use your whirlwind, it'll move immobilized, so you can still get out, or just make sure you're staying on your feet with this trait. Then the next one's going to be Feel the Rush, which causes movement skills, strength, swiftness,
Schon
and
Movement
endurance.
Speed.
Movement skills really good with
Ja,
this.
der wird hier der
Spec,
nächste Langstreckenläufer,
sword,
der
great sword,
weil
they're not
die
ranged, but they have
überall nur Speed,
good
Speed,
gap
Speed, Speed,
creators,
Speed,
gap,
Speed.
closers. So using this, you're going to feel the wind as you rush through it. It's going to give you some swiftness.
Nächstes
to
Speedrun
stay,
in Guild Wars macht der Orkanschütze.
mobility
Er
and
ist
also
einfach
bit of
schon am
endurance
Ziel, bevor die Gegner
to
gespottet
keep you
sind.
defensive. If you're using those movement skills to stay in like melee range, for example. Then last we have Wuthering Wind. It's going to add an additional proc to when you bluster, your pet's next attack is going to create just small damage as well
bonus
around the target. So it's just additional damage on the bluster. It is AoE damage, give it a bit better cleave.
No,
Has some
mach alles
interactions with your
kaputt.
pet. Bluster has a couple other interactions in the spec, so this trait has a potential to proc a decent amount, and it's just some additional damage if you want that from this tier. We can move to the master
Quickness.
tier.
Wen wundert's?
And the first one we have Flock Together. This is the one we talked about in the blog post. Avian pets have increased strike damage and health, and B skills grant quickness around the ranger. This is a pet trait like you see we've been adding to the core traits. This was actually the first pet trait. We really wanted birds to have a tie-in with this spec. It was very thematic, the wind and the tengu and all. And so we created this idea where also be like, wait, cool for all the pets. We kind of reverse added them to the core lines, but this one was actually the real one. So it's gonna, again, make your birds. It affects Phoenix, it affects Moas, just, things with feathers. It's gonna make them deal increased damage and also grant quickness around the ranger. This along with another Grandmaster trait, we're gonna try and have the spec do a quick DPS in PvE as an additional role as just normal DPS. So probably want this trait to make it easier. We can go on to, the next master tier. It's gonna be Perilous Skies. This is going to cause Quarry's Peril, that was the 4 skill in your Cyclone Bow, to be replaced by Pelt.
Damage
Pelt is pretty similar to Quarry's Peril, except
gut, dass man darauf hinweist, dass
it's
es
going to get
auf
2
dem
ammo,
Land
so you're going to be able to use it more.
ist natürlich auch eine Frage, ne? Wie funktionieren die Dinger unter Wasser?
So basically you can get more
Das
damage
ist
out of
unser
the slot,
nächster
better
Punkt,
poke,
ne? Wir
and
sehen
like
ja
this
eigentlich
for
bisher nur
world,
alles an
but
Land.
you're going to lose that powerful
Wie weit
immobilize.
ist die Spezialisierung
Kind of a
eigentlich
trait how you want that skill
wassertauglich?
to be used. More uses, which means faster Hawkeyes as well. And again, Quarry's Peril will have additional bonus, so this trait will get better. Let's talk about one of the Grandmaster traits.
Hier explizit ja, ne, zwischendurch auf Land hingewiesen wird.
Last Master trait is going to be Fetch.
Gute Frage.
Value off Pet Swap. Pet Swaps can be interesting.
Wir hatten es ja oft bei den Spezialisierungen, dass viele der Fertigkeiten ja unter Wasser dann nicht gingen, was ja dann irgendwo bescheuert war.
Arrows normally have 5 seconds. They have to
Aber bei
wait a bit
denen
of
hier ist
time
natürlich jetzt
to
auch
get
die
a full
gute
combo
Frage,
back,
wie
but you
funktionieren die
take
jetzt
this
alle
trait
unter
if you want to
Wasser?
speed that up a bit. Catch people off guard if you just need some arrows, like use the leap back or something. Pretty simple. Then we can get into the Grandmasters. And these are the theme of the Grandmasters is they're all going to tweak how you play the bow, what its exact gameplay loop looks like. We can start with the middle
so
again.
auf Geschwindigkeit ballerst, ey.
Gale Force is
Sieh
going to
schon die Preise im
augment your wind force
Handelshaus.
stack, which were the things that you built up, so you can get Hawkeye. It's going to give them a small movement speed and damage increase bonus.
Also der guckt dich dann an, hinterher bist du ein Schweizer Käse.
Use Hawkeye, it's going to convert these wind forces into a stronger bonus for a short period of time. So the goal here is that you kind of have a normal gameplay loop with your Cyclone Bow, and then after you finish it, you're going to get almost a Sikkim type bonus to go into like a weapon skill type burst. So you use this, and then you go do your Whirling Defense, go do like a Rapid Fire. It's just carrying that moment of power farther into your normal weapon skills. Then we can go to the top one. This is going to be Cloudburst, kind of where I was talking about some synergies between it and the
Du bist
other
im
skills.
Kampf, du kannst die Eigenschaften
Quarry's
nicht wechseln.
Peril and Supersonic Arrow, those are going to be the 4 and 5 skills, are going to reset the cooldown of Bluster. And then when you use Bluster or Hawkeye, you're going to give boons to nearby allies. These are quickness in PvE, it's swiftness and fury in the competitive modes. But basically, we want the value for there to be on the cooldown of Bluster, but it's going to change kind of the cadence. Where you use 2, then you use 4, 2 again, 5, 2. Kind of get a lot faster of a Hawkeye going. You don't have to wait to cooldown those longer, so it's going to kind of condense it. And then also be the option where you're supporting your allies. So also work off the Perilous Skies. You're going to get 2 pelts, which is 2 recharges for your Blusters, which procs Wuthering Winds. So going like diagonally, got a lot of synergy in the line. Then we move on to the final Grandmaster trait. It's going to be Shrike. The goal with Shrike is it's just for people that want to stay in the bow
Range 2000. Boah, Alter.
It's going to trigger off of missile hits, and missiles are just like projectiles, you know, from your bow, from your axes, what have you, things that fly through. Every time you hit someone, every 8 hits with a missile, you're going to shoot a volley of arrows, and also reach, store an arrow. It's basically as you're auto-attacking the bow, or you can swap to like a longbow, get a rapid fire.
Also, ich krieg dann noch zusätzliche Schüsse einfach so, wenn ich 8-mal mindestens mit der 1 eingetroffen habe, okay?
I recommend
Das ist gleich durch. 1 Stunde 30, 1 Stunde 35 war es ja. Ist die Frage, ob sie jetzt noch auf die Piepmetze eingehen, weil ja Blogpost hieß es ja, dass die Vogeltiergefährten durch ihn gebufft werden. Als einzige scheinbar.
You know, part of the spec and making sure things like flock together birds have long cast times. So has been a bit of an issue that for a while pet responsiveness wasn't great. You weren't able to interrupt their commands. We made sure that we went and fixed pet AI, that when you use a skill, your pet will obey you. So this applies to all ranger specs, untamed, druid, what have you. When you use an F2, you know, your white tag will give you Aegis when you want to.
neuen Bogen das automatisch
so we want to make sure that when the spec comes
auslöst.
out, and you're using those birds, they feel responsive like you would want them to.
There is some strange behavior when you are cheating and have no recharges, but I don't expect that anyone will run into that.
That covers it with the Gale Shot if you want to hover over
Give me
tooltip to get it.
the final tooltip pass. Yeah, so that's all of the elite specs we have for today. We'll probably be back next
Schade,
week.
auf Piepmetze gehen sie nicht weiter. Auf die Piepmetze gehen sie nicht weiter ein, außer das ist noch nicht drin.
But you'll just have to stay tuned to learn what those are.
Yep. You know, when the beta comes out, we're going to be looking for all the feedback you guys put out. We're going to have forum threads for each specialization as normal. Looking at other avenues as well, other social medias, gonna read all you guys say.
Das müsste jetzt der Hinweis sein, so ich verstehe von wegen, dass natürlich bis zur Beta noch Feedback einfließt, wie sie es sonst auch schon gemacht haben.
So, you know, we're just as excited as you guys are for you guys to get your hands on these things.
Yeah, and I guess we can just reiterate once again.
Die Frage, wie schnell der Bildkonstruktor ist und Wittel die schon einfach einsetzt, damit man das schon machen kann.
A little bit unbalanced, most likely. You know, there's going to be things that need improvement, mechanics that are maybe a little crazier than they need to be and need to be kind of reined back in or changed. You know, we've definitely seen, even with like some of the past non-elite spec betas.
Weil das zum Beispiel was, die Fähigkeit hat zum Beispiel, wenn wir die Gefährten wechseln, dass die Arrows aufgeladen werden, also die Federchen.
Some things just aren't going to work.
Sagen ja eigentlich Pfeile, aber sie haben es ja dargestellt mit
It's not what we're
Federn.
going for, but it's not something that is really a surprise. Like we're going to be trying some cool stuff, and some of it's going to need to be adjusted between beta and launch, and that is entirely kind of what we're expecting to do already.
Saw someone ask this. The Gale Shot bow will be available underwater. We actually have a harpoon gun version of it. Wanted to make sure, you know, all these spec mechanics would be available underwater, so you can play them wherever. So that shouldn't be a worry.
Also verstehe ich das richtig, dass der an den Bogen gebunden ist irgendwie und unter Wasser wird er funktionieren auf die Frage, und da brauchst du die Harpoon Gun.
That looks cool. All right, we're almost done. Any final words, Sailor?
Das ist natürlich dann interessant.
Read Ghosts of Ascalon.
Free Ghost of Ascalon.
Das heißt, das wäre ja dann was Ähnliches wie beim EOD, weil die mit dem Hammer, dass die Spezialisierung ja nur am effektivsten ist, wenn man den Hammer dabei hat, weil der ja dadurch gemacht wird.
Keep your eyes out for additional Elite Spec information. Next week's going to be a pretty similar pattern where we're going to have that initial kind of reveal video and developer blog post, and then we'll be back with another live stream where we show off the next heavy armor profession, medium armor profession, and light armor profession. So you guys can do some math to determine how likely it is that your favorite profession will be revealed next week if it has not already been done.
Yep. As always, stay hydrated.
Kriegen wir einen Leak, was die nächsten 3 sind? Wahrscheinlich nicht. Ich habe diesbezüglich auch nichts gesehen.
Not as good without Roy. Roy's like on vacation or something, so we couldn't even like...
vacationing in Europe and having a good time, but...
We'll see if we can't get Roy back to, run some of these streams too. But yeah, that's all we have today. So thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you in the mist.
Mir wär's eher thanks dafür, dass ihr es gezeigt habt. Und nun befinden wir uns am Ende unseres kleinen schnuckligen Videos. Denkt dran, wenn euch das Video gefallen hat, dann Daumen nach oben. Wenn euch weitere Videos auf unserem Kanal interessieren, dann abonnieren und das Bimmelglöckchen nicht vergessen, damit ihr immer das Neueste vom Neuesten nicht verpasst, was wir auf unserem kleinen Channel hier hochladen. Besucht uns auch auf unseren anderen Social Media Plattformen. Im Bereich Guild Wars 2 ist das Twitter, X und Facebook. Auf Twitter tue ich auch meine Streaming-Zeiten zusätzlich noch posten. Ansonsten könnt ihr auch gerne mal bei Gamer-Profils vorbeischauen. Social Media von Gamern für Gamer. Auf Instagram findet ihr mich auch oder ihr schaut einfach bei twitch.tv/gamingscharf rum. Da könnt ihr mich live sehen. Ihr könnt mit mir schreiben oder auch zocken, wenn ihr darauf Bock habt. Alles wie üblich in unserer kleinen stuckligen Videobeschreibung verlinkt. Meine Lieben, macht es gut. Bis bald. Wir sehen uns.